The frigid lake water instantly swallowed my body. My husband had just pushed my wheelchair off the end of the dock. In those suffocating seconds, as my breath ran out, a miracle happened. My legs, paralyzed for so long, suddenly moved. I slowly swam to shore. The first rays of morning sun slipped through the gaps in the bedroom blinds, warming my face. I slowly opened my eyes, shaking off the last remnants of sleep. The space beside me in the king-sized bed was empty. However, the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee drifting from the kitchen told me my husband, Ethan, was already awake. I managed a weak smile. 6 months had passed since the horrific accident that had stolen my freedom. A semi-truck lost control and slammed into our car. Ethan escaped with only minor injuries. I, on the other hand, had to accept a bitter reality. My spine was severely damaged, leaving both of my legs paralyzed. From that day forward, my world had shrunk to the confines of a wheelchair. Losing the ability to walk was the greatest shock of my life. To make matters worse, the accident happened not long after my mother passed away from a heart attack. My mother left me, her only child, the entire family company and estate. All that wealth felt meaningless when I could no longer run freely, dance, or simply take a walk in the park, without help. But in the midst of that despair and darkness, Ethan had become my saving grace. He shouldered every responsibility. He managed the company, cared for me with boundless love, spoon-fed me when I had no appetite, and always whispered words of comfort when I cried in the middle of the night, lamenting my fate. The bedroom door creaked open. Ethan entered, carrying a tray with my favorite breakfast of oatmeal and a hot cup of coffee. His handsome face was always adorned with a sincere smile that melted my heart. "Good morning, my princess," Ethan greeted me in his deep, warm voice. He placed the tray on the nightstand and gently kissed my forehead. "Did you sleep well? Is your lower back still hurting?" "Good morning, my love. It's much better," I replied, taking his hand. "Thank you for preparing all this. You must be so tired after staying up late last night to deal with all that paperwork at the office." Ethan shook his head slowly, gently stroking my hair. "Tired is not a word I use. When it comes to my beautiful wife, I just want the best for you. Oh, and don't forget your coffee. I added a little honey to help warm you up. After breakfast, I need to stop by the office to look over a few documents, and then we'll head to the lake house. You need some fresh air so you don't get bored cooped up at home." I nodded obediently. The plan for a short getaway to the lake house had been discussed for a few days now. Ethan was insistent on going, claiming the sunset over the lake would be incredibly beneficial for my mental recovery. After making sure I had started eating, Ethan said his goodbyes and left the room. Soon, the sound of his car's engine faded from the driveway. I sighed, staring at the hot cup of coffee on the nightstand. Suddenly, the bedroom door opened. Again. This time, Maria, our housekeeper who had worked for me since before I was injured, rushed in. Her face was pale and she was breathing heavily, as if she had just run a marathon. She held a dust cloth in her hand, but it was trembling uncontrollably. Maria shut the bedroom door firmly and locked it from the air inside. Her unusual behavior made me frown in confusion. "Maria, what's wrong? Why did you lock the door?" I asked in surprise, putting my spoon down. Maria tiptoed closer to the bed. Her eyes darted around the room frantically, as if making sure no one was hiding in the corners. When she reached me, she leaned in and whispered in a very small, trembling voice, "Sarah, please, listen to me very carefully. You must not drink this coffee. And I am begging you, do not go to the lake with Mr. Ethan today." Maria's words were choked with unshed tears. I was stunned. Her warning sounded bizarre and irrational. Why would she forbid me from drinking the coffee my own husband made? And why shouldn't I go to the lake house? "What do you mean? Ethan made this coffee, and we planned this trip to the lake together." "Don't talk nonsense, Maria. Are you feeling all right?" I asked, trying to find a logical explanation for her panic. Tears streamed down Maria's cheeks. She shook her head quickly. "I'm not sick, Sarah. Last night, I accidentally overheard Mr. Ethan's phone call in his study. I was going to bring him some coffee, but the door was slightly ajar. I heard him say that everything was ready for today. He said the sleeping pills and the coffee would make you weak. And that no one would suspect a thing if you fell into the lake, because the wheels of the wheelchair would have accidentally slipped. My heart felt like it stopped beating as I heard Maria's words. The blood in my veins turned to ice. I looked at the coffee cup in horror. Could this be real? No, it couldn't be. Ethan was a man who loved me deeply. He sacrificed his own free time to care for me, a disabled woman. Maria must have misheard. She must have. She must have misheard. Ethan was talking about business. Maybe about a new project by the lake. You shouldn't make such a terrible accusation against my husband, I said, my voice rising slightly, trying to hide the panic that was slowly creeping into my heart. Maria immediately knelt by my bedside, grabbing my hand and squeezing it tightly. I swear to God, Sarah, I am not lying. I've worked for your family since your mother was alive. I see you as my own family. Please, do not go to that lake. I have a very bad feeling about this. I stared into Maria's eyes. There wasn't a hint of deception in them, only boundless fear. My thoughts became a whirlwind. Fragments of memories began to surface. It was true, for the past few days, Ethan's coffee had seemed a bit bitter, and after drinking it, I would fall into a deep sleep until morning, remembering nothing. I also recalled how insistent Ethan had been about going to the lake house this week. The weather in the Pacific Northwest was not favorable, with frequent afternoon rain. Could it be? The man who slept beside me every night? The man who wiped away my tire, and how tears. Could he be plotting to murder me? A wave of nausea washed over me. I was caught in a terrible dilemma. On one hand, I loved Ethan dearly and trusted him completely. But on the other, the instincts of a woman who had survived one fatal accident were screaming at me not to ignore Maria's warning. All right, Maria. I won't drink the coffee. Please, pour it down the sink right now, I ordered in a shaky voice. Maria immediately got up and took the cup to the bathroom. When she came out, I took a deep breath, trying to control my emotions. Maria, I still have to go too. The lake with Ethan. Sarah, no, Maria interrupted, her face turning ashen. Hear me out first. If I suddenly cancel the trip, Ethan will suspect something is wrong. If he really is plotting something, he will find another way, perhaps far more dangerous, and I won't be prepared. I have to go to see for myself if what you heard is true or just a misunderstanding. But I need your help. I had Maria retrieve an old phone I hadn't used in a long time from my vanity drawer, as well as a sealed plastic Ziploc bag. I turned the phone on, checked that the battery was full, and then activated the hidden voice recording feature. I placed the phone in the bag, sealed it to make it waterproof, and then tucked it into a secret pocket of the thick jacket I planned to wear. Maria, if I'm not back by tomorrow morning, or if something bad happens to me, you must go to Arthur Coleman immediately. You know our family lawyer, right? Tell him everything you heard. Maria nodded, crying silently. Okay, Sarah. I will do as you say, please be careful. When Ethan returned home an hour later, I was dressed and sitting in my process wheelchair, pretending as if everything was normal. Ethan looked pleased when he saw the empty coffee cup on the nightstand. He thought I had drunk it all. He gently helped me into the car, folded my chair, and put it in the trunk. My heart pounded in my chest the entire way to the cabin on the lake. I prayed silently, hoping that all my suspicions and Maria's warning were just a terrible mistake. I hoped my husband truly loved me. The drive to the cabin, nestled deep in the forests of Washington, took about 2 hours from the city. The atmosphere in the car felt suffocating, even though Ethan kept playing our favorite romantic songs and telling old stories. Every laugh and smile now seemed like a mask hiding his true face. I did my best to return his smiles, laugh at the right moments, and feign a bit of dizziness, implying that the sleeping pills in my morning coffee were starting to take effect. Our family cabin was located far from the main road. It was surrounded by a bay-dye, dense pine forest and overlooked a deep, secluded natural lake. There were no other houses nearby. This place used to be my mother's and my favorite retreat. But now, looking out the car window, the water's surface was still and dark, like a grave, waiting for my arrival. Ethan parked the car in the cabin's driveway. He got out, took out my wheelchair, and helped me into it. The afternoon wind was blowing quite strong, carrying a bone-chilling cold. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, checking to make sure the phone in its secret pocket was recording every sound around us. The fresh air is amazing, isn't it? Just like I said, Ethan said, pushing my chair down the stone path that led to the wooden dock, stretching out over the lake. The dock was deserted. The lake's surface reflected the afternoon sun's rays, which were starting to turn a reddish-orange. The atmosphere, which should have been romantic, made my skin crawl. My self-preservation instincts were screaming, ordering me to tell Ethan to turn back and go inside. But my tongue felt frozen. I still desperately hoped that he just wanted to watch the sunset with me. Ethan stopped my chair right at the edge of the dock. The vast, deep lake stretched out before us. I could see my pale reflection on the water's surface. "Look, honey. The sun is so beautiful," Ethan said. His hands rested on the dawed handles of my chair. His voice was very calm, too calm. "Yes, it's beautiful, Ethan. But it's cold out here. Can we go inside?" "I'm feeling a little dizzy," I said, trying to test him. Instead of turning the chair, Ethan only tightened his grip on the handles. I felt the chair vibrate as he began to rock it gently back and forth, as if preparing for a push. My heart hammered as if it would burst from my chest. Maria's warning echoed in my ears again. Suddenly, Ethan leaned forward, his mouth close to my ear. His breath was cold. His voice was no longer filled with gentle, loving words. There was only a terrifying coldness. "Die, you fool. Soon, everything will be mine," Ethan hissed, his voice full of time-swout hatred. Before I could even process that cruel sentence, Ethan used all his strength to shove my chair forward. The world spun. My body, along with the heavy steel chair, was thrown into the air, suspended for a moment before crashing into the Dasta lake with a loud splash. The freezing water instantly submerged my entire body. The pain from the impact seared my skin. I opened my eyes, but all I saw was darkness and murky water. Air bubbles escaped from my mouth as I screamed silently underwater. The steel chair was quickly pulling my body down to the dark lake bottom. The seat belt, which was supposed to protect me, had now turned into a deadly chain, binding my body. My lungs began to burn. I needed air. Absolute terror paralyzed my mind. Ethan's face, his sneering smile, and his last words played in my head like a terrible movie. The man I loved most, the man I trusted completely, turned out to be a monster plotting to kill me for money. The pain in my heart overshadowed the cold of the lake water. This betrayal had completely shattered my soul. Just as my consciousness began to fade and darkness enveloped my vision, a powerful jolt of electricity shot down my spine. The absolute shock of betrayal, the frigid water, and the very real threat to my life flooded my system with adrenaline. Somehow, the invisible barrier that had blocked the nerves in my legs for so long instantly crumbled. Without realizing it, I twitched my toes. A strange warmth spread from my thighs down to my feet. My legs, which had been numb and useless for 6 months, could suddenly feel the pressure of the water. The will to live exploded in my chest. I couldn't die like this. I would not let that murderer win and take everything that belonged to my family. Gathering my last ounce of strength, I fumbled for the seatbelt buckle across my lap. My fingers, numb from the cold, struggled to press the release button. 1 second. Tfo. Click. The seatbelt sprang open. The weight of the chair was instantly gone, and it sank into the abyss. I kicked my legs, trying to push myself toward the surface. It was a miracle. My legs were actually obeying my brain's commands. Though my movements were still stiff and weak, the push was enough to give me momentum. I swam with all my might toward the faint light on the surface. My lungs were nearly empty. They felt like they were about to burst. Just a little further, just a little more, an inner voice screamed. Finally, my head broke the surface. I took a deep, ragged breath, trying to gulp in air without making a sound. I wiped my drenched face and immediately hid under the dark wooden dock. I clung to a moss-covered wooden pillar to keep from drowning again. My whole body was shaking, my teeth chattering, but I forced myself to stay still. Footsteps approached on the dock directly above me. I held my breath, listening intently. "Is it done?" A female voice rang out. My heart sank again. It was the Voice of Jessica, my best friend since college. The friend who always visited me, brought me fruit, and cried with me, mourning my paralysis. It went smoothly, Ethan replied. His voice sounded cheerful and carefree, as if he had just taken out the trash, not murdered his wife. The fool sank to the bottom with her chair. With the sleeping pills I've been giving her, she didn't have the strength to fight back. In a few hours, I'll call the police and pretend to be hysterical that my disabled wife accidentally rolled into the Gerd Lake. I heard Jessica's soft laugh. Her footsteps came closer, and through the gaps in the dock's planks, I saw her wrap her arms around Ethan in an affectionate embrace. Finally, my love. For 6 months, I've had to play the part of the tracted, caring friend, listening to her boring complaints. I was so sick of looking at her, Jessica said sarcastically. Now, all her company's assets, the mansion, and the money in the bank will be yours as the sole heir. We can officially get married and get out of here. Of course, baby. It's all for us, Ethan replied, kissing Jessica on the lips. Hot tears streamed down my cold cheeks. The physical pain from the cold was nothing compared to the devastation in my heart. My husband and my best friend had coldly planned my murder. They had been playing a game behind my back, laughing at my suffering, and patiently waiting for the right moment to eliminate me from my mother's inheritance. I squeezed my eyes shut. The weak, paralyzed woman named Sarah had drowned at the bottom of this lake. The person under the dock now was a new soul. The sadness and pain in my heart slowly dissolved, replaced by a blazing fire of rage. A cold, ruthless vengeance began to take over my mind. I would make sure they both paid dearly for every tear I shed and every betrayal they committed. Now, I had to survive. I had to find a way to escape this lake undetected and exact my revenge in a way that would make them suffer the most. I felt the pocket of my jacket, the sealed bag protecting my phone. The recording of their conversation had just become my first weapon. The war had just begun. Time seemed to stand still as I hid under the damp, moss-covered wooden dock. Night began to fall, replacing the sunset with a thick, ominous darkness. The air by the lake became bone-chillingly cold. Part of my body was still submerged in the icy water. I clung to a dock pillar with both hands to keep from being swept away. My teeth were still chattering violently, and my lips must have been blue. Above, the footsteps of my husband and that traitor, Jessica, finally faded and disappeared. I faintly heard a car start and drive away from the cabin. They had intentionally left to create a fake alibi. Perhaps they were stopping at a premise restaurant or a gas station before my husband would return to the cabin, screaming hysterically, to report that his disabled wife had rolled into the disobey lake and drowned. The plan was meticulously calculated, ruthless, and inhuman. I knew I couldn't stay here. If I stayed any longer, the cold lake water would slowly kill me from hypothermia. I gathered all my courage, let go of the wooden support, and swam away from the dock. I headed towards the shore, which was thick with bushes and tall weeds. Every leg movement in the water was agonizing. My leg muscles, which had not been used to support my body weight for 6 months, were now working overtime. It felt like 1,000 needles were stabbing my calves and thighs simultaneously. After a painful struggle, my hands finally touched the cold, slippery mud of the Tayan's bank. I pulled myself ashore, gasping for breath. My strength was completely gone. I lay face down on the muddy ground, my chest heaving, breathing in the damp night air. The thick jacket I was wearing was now unbearably heavy, soaked with water. But I didn't dare take it off, because in a secret pocket was my phone with the recording that proved their crime. Just as I had gathered enough strength to crawl a little further onto dry ground, a piercing siren suddenly shattered the silence of the night. My heart began to pound. Through the bushes, I saw red and blue lights flashing through the pine trees. It was undoubtedly the police and a rescue team. My husband was acting faster than I thought. He had already started his performance. His voice echoed faintly from among the trees. It sounded hoarse and panicked. A perfect act. Help! My wife fell in. Please find her, I'm begging you. She's in a wheelchair and can't swim. Please, save my wife. Tears of rage welled up in my eyes again. How disgusting he was. He was screaming for help like a heartbroken, devastated husband, even though he had pushed me into the abyss with his own hands. Bright flashlight beams began to scan the lake's surface and the area around the Red S. Dock. Rescue divers started entering the water and checking the area. I had to get out of here, now. If the police or the rescue team found me now, I would have no solid physical evidence other than the recording on my phone, which might have been damaged by the water. My husband had money, power, and a very solid alibi. He could easily twist the truth, tell the police I was hallucinating due to post-traumatic stress from the accident, or accuse me of being mentally ill. He could confiscate my phone under the pretense of calming me down. I couldn't get caught without a well-thought-out plan. Forcing myself to move, I began to crawl through the undergrowth, away from the cabin. Sharp thorns from wild bushes scratched my face and hands, causing stinging pain, but I ignored it. Suddenly, a powerful cramp seized my right leg. I collapsed onto the ground, which was covered in dry leaves, crying out in intense pain as I clutched my calf. Tears flowed uncontrollably. My body had reached its limit. Darkness began to cloud my vision, and a bone-deep chill set in. Was my journey really going to end in this dark forest? Don't make a sound. Stay on the ground. Suddenly, a hoarse, low voice whispered from the shadow of a large tree in front of me. I flinched, almost screaming in fear. I tried to crawl away, but my body wouldn't obey. A figure emerged from the darkness. The moonlight breaking through the clouds revealed a weathered old man wearing a straw hat and a tattered jacket that smelled faintly of fish. A small pair of binoculars hung around his neck, and he held a fishing net in his hand. Who are you? Don't touch me, I whispered, gathering my last bit of strength, ready to fight. The man squatted beside me, keeping a distance so as not to frighten me further. His wrinkled face radiated a sense of calm and compassion. The name's Gus. I'm a fisherman. I usually fish on the other side of the lake. Don't be scared, I'm not a bad person. I was watching from a distance last night. I saw what that man did to you on the dock. My eyes widened. You saw? Gus nodded slowly, his face showing suppressed anger. Yes, ma'am. I saw him push that chair. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but when he drove off and then came back with the police, pretending to cry, I knew something was wrong. I walked along the shore because I was sure you would find a way to escape. Come on, you can't stay here. The police will bring dogs soon. You'll freeze to death if you don't get warm. I looked into Gus's eyes, searching for even a hint of deceit, but found none. My instincts told me this old man was the only guardian angel God had sent me that night. Without a second thought, I gave a weak nod. Gus quickly set his net aside and helped me up. He supported my trembling body. We followed a path through the dark pine forest, avoiding the main road, so we wouldn't be spotted by the police, who were still busy searching around the Haspel Lake. Every step was torture, but Gus kept whispering words of encouragement. After walking for quite a distance, we came out onto a dirt road hidden from the 7th Main Highway. An old, battered pickup truck with peeling paint was parked there. Empty wicker baskets, smelling faintly of vegetables and fish, were in the back. Climb into the back, hide behind the baskets, and cover yourself with this thick tarp. Don't make a sound until we get to my place, Gus instructed, helping me climb into the truck bed. I immediately curled up in a corner, pulling the thick, dusty tarp over myself. The smell of earth, rotting vegetables, and fish was a strange mix. But right now, it seemed more pleasant than my husband's disgusting cologne. The engine roared to life, and the old truck slowly made its way down the dark country roads. I hugged my knees, the entire way, praying we wouldn't be stopped by a police car. After about 30 minutes, which felt like an eternity, the truck finally stopped. The engine died. Gus pulled back the tarp and offered his hand. We were at a simple shack built from weather-beaten lumber and topped with a corrugated tin roof, situated on the bank of a secluded river inlet, far from the city noise, far from my husband. Gus led me into his shack. The room was simple, lit only by a single dim yellow bulb. Sit here on this stool. I'll boil some water and get you some dry clothes. My wife passed a few years back, but her clothes are still packed away neatly. You can wear them, Gus said politely. I sat on the creaky wooden stool, looking around. This shack was the perfect hideout. While Gus went to the kitchen, I shakily took my phone out of my jacket pocket. I slowly opened the sealed bag. My phone was still working. The screen flickered, showing the battery was low, but the recording was saved safely. I took a deep breath, wiping away the tears that started to flow again. That night I lost everything. My husband, my friend, and my trust. But that same night, I got my life and my legs back. Gus returned with a steaming mug of Dotto. Strong, black coffee and a pile of clean, dry clothes. Drink this. It'll help. Chase the cold out of your bones, then get changed. We're safe here. Nobody knows about this place except a few local fishermen. I took the mug with both hands. The warmth of the coffee soothed my throat, offering a small comfort amidst the pain. Thank you, Gus. I don't know how to thank you. If you hadn't found me, I would have died today. Gus smiled sincerely, revealing the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. Folks should help each other, ma'am, especially when they see an injustice. Get some rest. Tomorrow morning, we'll figure out what to do next. We can't let wicked people like your husband win. Gus's words ignited a fighting spirit within me. He was right. My husband was not allowed to win. This play had to end with his and Jessica's tears of blood. I would gather all my strength in this humble shack, and when the time was right, I would emerge to destroy them completely. The cry of seagulls and the gentle lapping of waves woke me from a restless sleep. I slowly opened my eyes, looking up at the ceiling of rough-hewn wooden planks. Suddenly, a flood of horrific memories from the previous night hit me. Like a physical blow. It wasn't a nightmare. I had truly been betrayed, thrown into a lake, and was now hiding in a fisherman's shack. I tried to get up from the simple cot, which was covered with a thin mattress. A terrible pain shot through my entire body. The muscles in my back and legs were extremely stiff and sore, as if they had been beaten repeatedly. But underneath the pain, there was a deep sense of gratitude. I wiggled my toes, then slowly bent my knees. It was a weak and shaky effort, but my legs were indeed working. Again. The miracle of that night was still with me. Gus entered through the back door, carrying a plate of boiled potatoes and a mug of hot tea. Good morning, ma'am. Thank God you're awake. He greeted me with the same kind smile on his weathered face. Good morning, Gus. And thank you. Please, just call me Sarah. You don't need to call me ma'am, I replied, managing to sit up and lean against the rough plank. Well, after eating some potatoes to fill my empty stomach, I realized I couldn't waste any more time. My husband was probably busy finalizing the police report to push in for a death certificate. I needed to contact the only person in this world I still trusted, aside from my late mother. Gus, could I borrow your phone for a moment? I need to call our family lawyer. He was a good friend of my late father, and only he can help me stop my husband's evil plan, I asked hopefully. Gus nodded quickly, pulled an old flip phone with a slightly cracked screen from his pocket, and handed it to me. Of course, Sarah. This one's just for calls and texts. No internet on it. Hope the number you need still works. I took the phone. Fortunately, since I was young, I've had a habit of memorizing important phone numbers. I punched in the number, my fingers still a bit stiff, and pressed the phone to my ear. I heard it ringing. My heart began to pound. What if the number had changed? What if he didn't answer? Hello, who is this? A deep, serious voice came from the other end of the line. It was Arthur Coleman's voice. Mr. Coleman, it's me. It's Sarah, I said in a trembling voice, trying to hold back my tears. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then, there was a loud thud of something falling, probably a coffee cup. Sarah? My God, is it really you, dear girl? The morning news said you drowned in the lake last night and your body hasn't been found. Your husband has been crying nonstop in front of the mound. Reporters. Arthur's voice sounded panicked and disbelieving. I'm alive, Mr. Coleman. My husband didn't try to save me. He pushed me into the seas, R. Clumman Lake, intending to kill me. He and Jessica planned all of this. Mr. Coleman, I need your help. I'm in hiding and I'm afraid to come out. My husband could kill me at any moment if he finds out I'm alive. That bastard. Where are you, dear? Tell me where you are. I'll come and get you. Right away. Don't call anyone else but me, Arthur ordered sternly. I gave him directions to Gus's shack, following the old fisherman's instructions. After hanging up, I returned the phone to Gus. I felt a little better. Reinforcements were on their way. 2 hours later, a black sedan with tinted windows pulled up in the grassy yard. Two of the shack. The door opened, and Arthur Coleman hurried out. He wasn't alone. Another older man carrying a black briefcase followed him. I recognized him immediately. It was Dr. Evans, the neurologist who had treated me in the first few months after the accident, until my husband fired him under the pretext of seeking alternative treatments. Arthur entered the shack. Seeing me sitting on the wooden stool, in tattered clothes but alive and breathing, the old man hugged me tightly. Tears dripped onto his suit. Thank God you're alive, dear. I'm sorry I couldn't look after you these past 6 months. Your husband adamantly forbade all your relatives from seeing you. He even hired security to keep me from entering your house. It's all right, Arthur. The important thing is we've met, I said, wiping my tears. But why is Dr. Evans here with you? Arthur sighed deeply and motioned for Dr. Evans to come closer. Dr. Evans opened his briefcase and took out a thick medical file that I knew very well. Sarah, there's a terrible truth you should have known about your condition. A long time ago, Dr. Evans said in a serious tone, making the atmosphere in the shack tense. When you had your accident 6 months ago, your spine was indeed severely damaged. But after several surgeries and intensive treatment, by 2nd month, physically and neurologically, your legs should have been functioning normally again. I was stunned by his words. What do you mean, doctor? If my legs were fine, why couldn't I move them at all? Why was I in a wheelchair for months? Dr. Evans pointed to a note in his medical file. This phenomenon is called psychogenic paralysis. The accident left you with deep psychological trauma. The fear, shock, and extreme grief of losing your mother caused your subconscious to create a protective barrier. Your brain refused to send signals to the nerves in your legs. Your paralysis was real, but the problem was not in your bones, but in your mind. I explained this in detail to your husband at the time, Dr. Evans continued, his face full of regret. I recommended immediate psychological therapy and regular physical therapy to break this mental barrier. But your husband was furious. He accused me of being incompetent, fired me, and took over your treatment himself. He said all you needed was peace and quiet at home. He forbade me from telling you about your real condition. I was reeling from all this information. So, all this time, my husband had intentionally let me feel disabled and helpless. He deliberately kept me in the double-S illusion of paralysis, so I would be completely dependent on him. And amazingly, the terrifying incident at the lake last night was the trigger. The extreme shock, the terrifying fear of drowning, and the bone-chilling cold water caused your brain to produce a massive amount of adrenaline for survival. It was this adrenaline surge that shattered the psychological wall in your severed brain. Unconsciously, your survival instinct took over and forced the nerves in your legs to work again. Tears of rage streamed down my cheeks. All the mysteries were now solved. The coffee, which had always tasted slightly bitter, must have contained a strong sedative. It was given to me to numb my mind, to ensure I would never have a chance to recover from my psychological trauma. My husband had complete control over me, both physically and mentally, like a lifeless doll. So what was his real motive, Arthur? Why did my husband do all this? If he wanted my money, as my husband, he already enjoyed all the comforts and money I gave him. Why did he have to kill me? I asked in a shaky voice, trying to control my emotions. Arthur rubbed his face tiredly and took another document from his briefcase. Because the pocket money and luxurious lifestyle you provided him would never be enough to pay off his debts. Sarah, I've been conducting a secret investigation for the past few months after I became suspicious when your husband dismissed me as the company's lawyer. Arthur opened the document and placed it on the rickety wooden table in front of me. My eyes widened at the staggering numbers on the paper. Your husband is a pathological gambler. Before the accident, he had borrowed money from an accident hire, extremely dangerous loan shark syndicate to gamble overseas. The total debt, including interest, has reached several $1 million. This syndicate has started to threaten his life. My husband was trapped. The only way to pay off the debt was to withdraw money from the largest family assets, the long-term deposits, and sell the controlling stake in the company. But he couldn't do that without my signature or thumbprint, I quickly countered. As the heir, my mother had set very strict inheritance rules before she died. Exactly right, Arthur replied. That's why he needed you dead. According to your mother's will, if you die without children, the entire inheritance goes to Kepasafin, your legal husband. Your husband had already scheduled an appointment with his estate attorney and the bank to finalize the transfer of all assets next week. And do you know which attorney was handling that fraudulent paperwork? I clenched my fists. My nails dug into my palms, stinging. Jessica. That snake works for a well-known estate law firm in the city. That's right. They planned this high-level conspiracy together. Your husband kills you, and Jessica ensures all the asset transfer paperwork looks legal in the eyes of Tapsis. The law, Arthur explained, his jaw tight. We don't have much time, Sarah. The recording on your phone is very good. Initial evidence, but it's not enough to convict them of premeditated murder. If your body is never found, they could hire a good lawyer to challenge the authenticity of the recording in court. The shock, grief, and bewilderment that had overwhelmed me until now vanished without a trace. Learning that cruel and systematic truth, something changed in me. My heart grew cold. The fear had drowned at the bottom of the lake last night, replaced by a cold, deadly calculation. I looked at Arthur, Dr. Evans, and Gus in turn. My face was a mask of stone, without a single tear. If the recording isn't enough, then we need to find physical evidence they can't refute. Arthur, I said in a calm, firm voice that surprised even myself, we need to find where my husband keeps the original records of his gambling debts. If we can prove his financial motive and catch him in the act of falsifying documents in front of a bank representative, they will have no chance of escaping responsibility. Arthur looked at me with a proud expression. He saw that the weak daughter of his late friend had grown into a true warrior. I agree. We will strike where they least expect it. We will plan in this shack and ensure they fall into the trap we have set. That's it. I had transformed from fear to calculated revenge. My husband may have thought he had drowned a crippled dove, but he didn't realize it. He had awakened a trial de set tigress ready to rip his heart out. After confirming my condition was stable enough, Dr. Evans said his goodbyes, planning to return to the hospital and avoid arousing Ethan's suspicion with his absence. Now, in the simple shack, surrounded by the sound of flowing water, only I, Arthur Coleman, and Gus remained. The daytime air was quite warm, but the chill of my husband's betrayal still clung to my heart. I forced myself to stand up from the wooden stool, leaning on the small table. Gus quickly fashioned a sturdy walking stick for me from a tree branch to help me get around. Every step felt like walking on broken glass, but I was determined not to give up. I paced back and forth in the small room, trying to reactivate my long-dormant muscles. Arthur watched my every move carefully, his old eyes a mixture of relief and concern. He opened his briefcase and took out a few papers showing the financial charts of my mother's company. He placed the papers on the table and looked at me very seriously. Sarah, let's think through our plan carefully, Arthur began. Ethan is very cunning. He's not acting alone. With Jessica's help, who has extensive connections in the legal field, they can make all the fraudulent documents look perfectly legitimate. If we just give the police the recording from your phone, they could deny everything. They could hire an audio expert to discredit the 7P evidence, or even claim the recording was manipulated by AI. We have to destroy their lies at the root. I stopped pacing and sat on the stool, placing the stick beside me. So what should we do, Arthur? How can we prove his primary motive was the gambling debt? If it's an underground syndicate, won't it be very difficult to trace their cash flow? Arthur smiled mysteriously, the smile of a seasoned lawyer who has sensed his opponent's weakness. Underground criminal organizations don't use official bank transfers for their illegal activities. However, Ethan has a fatal weakness, common to many high rollers: arrogance and excessive meticulousness. Gamblers always keep records of their wins and losses, as well as who they owe and how much. According to a private investigator I hired a few months ago, Ethan always keeps a small, black, leather-bound notebook. This notebook contains all the details of his gambling transactions, the names of the loan sharks, and the payment schedules. He doesn't dare store it on a computer for fear of being hacked. Where does he keep this black book? I asked, my heart starting to beat faster. This evidence was the key to putting Ethan in prison for life. According to my source, this notebook is always kept in a secret safe in his study, at your house, Arthur replied, his voice soft but firm. I flinched. Ethan's study in our house was always kept tightly locked. Since I became disabled, he absolutely forbade anyone from entering it. Even Maria was forbidden to clean it unless Ethan was present in the room. If the black book is there, we have a very good chance. However, I remember that the security system in my house is very strict now. After my accident, Ethan installed surveillance cameras in every corner. Arthur, getting into Ethan's study is almost impossible. The whole house is full of cameras, and Ethan is the only one with the key to the safe. How can we get that book without being detected? I asked, frowning, trying to find a way out. Arthur looked at me confidently. We don't have to go in there. We have a very reliable mole in that house. Maria. I looked at Arthur in disbelief. Maria? But Maria is terrified. Ethan could harm her if he finds out. Maria contacted me this morning, right after she saw the news about you disappearing at the lake, Arthur explained, calming my fears. She was sobbing, thinking you were really dead. I had to tell her you were still alive and safe with me. Maria is a very brave woman. She is ready to do anything to repay your mother's kindness and help you. She told me that Ethan will be holding a press conference in the front yard of the house tomorrow morning to manipulate public opinion. Ethan, the security guards, and the journalists will have their attention focused on the street, and that's when Maria will act. A very good opportunity. A man too busy seeking attention and feigning grief often becomes very careless, the old fisherman nodded, who had been listening intently the whole time. Arthur confirmed Gus's words. Exactly. I've already instructed Maria. While Ethan is crying in front of the cameras, Maria will enter the study through a secret door from the guest bathroom, the one you used to play hide and seek as a child. Ethan doesn't know about this door. Maria's mission is not to take the book. If it disappears, Ethan will immediately realize it and cancel his plan to withdraw the money. Maria's task is to take a picture of the top every page of the black book with her phone, and then send the photos to me. Then, she must put the book back exactly where she found it. The plan sounded very risky, but it was the only viable option. I nodded slowly, imagining Maria's courage, having to work stealthily under the nose of a monster like Ethan. If we get photographic evidence of his gambling debts, we can use it to force the bank to halt all cash withdrawal transactions and also provide the police with compelling evidence of his motive for attempted murder. All right, we'll have Maria gather this evidence, I said decisively. What about Jessica? We can't let that woman get away with this. She's the legal mastermind of this whole evil plan. Jessica will be handling all the inheritance paperwork tomorrow afternoon at the city estate and trust law firm, where she works, Arthur said, pointing to a plaintiff paper on the table. As soon as Jessica finishes forging the expedited death certificate and probate orders, they will immediately legalize the transfer of all your mother's assets to Ethan. They will be celebrating their victory in a closed room with the bank representative they've bribed. That's where we'll catch them. But to make them completely relax and rush things, we need to apply a little psychological pressure on Ethan today. I narrowed my eyes, beginning to understand the clever lawyer's thinking. You want me to cause a panic in Ethan? Arthur grinned. Exactly. A panicked killer makes many mistakes. We will trick your husband into believing that someone witnessed his crime last night. Someone who is ready to blackmail him. This way, he will force Jessica to speed up the texto process of getting the money to pay off the blackmailer. They will walk right into our trap, unaware that the blackmailer is the very victim they tried to reach her. Drown. The three of us carefully mapped out a fake blackmail strategy. The pain in my former legs seemed to disappear, replaced by a surge of adrenaline that made my blood boil. I couldn't wait to see the look on my husband's face when he realized that the disabled wife he had abandoned at the bottom of the lake had returned as his worst nightmare. That same day, Gus drove his old pickup truck to the nearest local market. At Arthur's request, this brave fisherman bought a cheap smartphone and a new, untraceable SIM card. Gus also very carefully returned to the lake to carry out a special task. Around 5 p.m., Gus returned to the cabin with the new phone and a tapedes photo he had just taken on the lake shore at the scene of the previous days. Creamy. I picked up the phone and looked at the bright screen. It showed a photo of my heavily damaged wheelchair, washed up on a rocky, muddy beach. A luxurious diamond watch was lying on one of the wheels. My heart tightened. It was Ethan's watch, a birthday gift I had given him 2 years ago. It must have slipped off his wrist when he used all his strength to push my chair last night. Gus had found the watch in the grass that morning and placed it on the chair to take a SOWIT photo as blackmail evidence. Excellent, Gus. Thank you, Arthur praised, patting the fisherman on the fester shoulder. This photo is enough to make Ethan's heart stop for a moment. I took a deep breath, looking at the photo on the screen with mixed feelings. I remembered the cold water of the lake and the moment I almost died. But now, I was in control. I opened the messaging app, typed in Ethan's private number, which I remembered very well, and attached the photo. Then, with confident, unwavering fingers, I typed out the threat. I saw what you did at the dock last night. I have your watch as proof. And a video of you pushing your wife. Get $1 million in cash ready. If I don't have the money by tomorrow afternoon, the police will have everything. Don't try to find out who I am, or you'll regret it. I hit send. The message flew through the network to the man who had ruined my life. I closed my eyes, imagining Ethan's reaction when he received this message. In the midst of his performance in front of the police and relatives who came to present it, offer their condolences. Half an hour later, the phone in my hand buzzed violently. A message came from Ethan's number, consisting of only 2 words, showing his extreme panic. Who are you? I smiled coldly and didn't reply. Arthur forbade me from any further correspondence. Silence was the most dangerous psychological weapon. Let Ethan's imagination and fear torment him all night. Let him wonder who the witness was. Who was demanding such a ransom, while he didn't have $1 million in cash. The only way to silence the blackmailer was to get his hands on my mother's inheritance as soon as possible. And indeed, our plan worked perfectly. By evening, Gus, who had been watching my loss, the house from a distance since noon on a borrowed motorcycle from a neighbor, called me. Gus said that Ethan seemed very agitated. He had stormed out of the house without his guards, speeding through the city's crowded streets. Gus followed, keeping a safe distance. Ethan drove to Jessica's luxury apartment. They met in the underground parking garage. From a distance, Gus saw them arguing fiercely. Ethan showed Jessica his phone screen, and Jessica's face immediately turned pale. Panic was evident in their agitated gestures and mutual accusation. The next morning was extremely tense. It was a crucial day. As we planned, Ethan held a press conference in the front yard of the house. Through the small TV in the corner of Gus's shack, I saw my husband's face live. He was wearing a black, long-sleeved shirt. His eyes were swollen and red, as if he had been crying all about night. In front of dozens of microphones, his voice trembled. I have lost half of my soul, Ethan sobbed in front of the cameras, wiping away his crocodile tears with a handkerchief. My wife, whom I loved dearly, accidentally slipped while we were admiring the lake. I tried to jump in and save her, but the water was too dark and deep. I couldn't save her. I begged the search team to continue looking for my wife's body so I can give her a proper funeral. I was disgusted by every lie that came out of his filthy mouth. He was playing the part so well. The public saw him as a tragic and very loyal husband. However, my attention immediately shifted when Arthur's phone buzzed. Multiple messages came in succession. The message was from Maria. Arthur opened the message, and a smile of relief spread across his face. He showed me the phone screen. Maria had done it. While everyone else in the house was focused on the press conference, Maria had slipped into Ethan's study. She had taken pictures of dozens of pages of a black notebook detailing Ethan's gambling debts to the syndicate, complete with signatures on contracts and unimaginable interest rates. This was the physical evidence that no lawyer, not even the best, could refute. His motive for the crime was now crystal clear. Excellent, Maria, Arthur muttered with satisfaction. He immediately emailed the photos to a high-ranking police officer, an old friend he had trusted for years. Along with it, Arthur sent a copy of the recording from my phone. This evidence was enough to immediately issue an arrest warrant. Now it was our turn to act. I looked at the blurry mirror on the shack's wall. The reflection in it was not the weak, tear-stained Sarah who was confined to a wheelchair. It was the face of a woman, resurrected from the dead. I put on the formal suit that Arthur's assistant had brought me that morning. I tied my hair back neatly. I took my wooden cane and stood up straight, my head held high. Although my legs still ached when I put weight on them, the fire of passion in my chest gave me extraordinary strength. "Are you ready, Sarah?" Arthur asked, adjusting his jacket. His black sedan was waiting outside. I nodded decisively, looking straight ahead. "I'm more than ready, Arthur. Let's go to my husband's little celebration. It's time for a ghost from the past to reclaim what's hers." The three of us, I, Arthur, and Gus, left the shack and got into the car. The engine roared, taking us along the country roads back to the city center. Our destination was the luxurious office building where Jessica's law firm was located. In a locked room on the 5th floor of this building, my husband must have been sitting, both nervous and excited, waiting for the papers to be signed to legalize my inheritance. He thought that by getting the cash today, he could silence the hidden blackmailer and live freely and happily with his mistress. He had no idea that this blackmailer was sitting in a car, not for money, but to destroy his life, born from his own arrogance. The trap was set, the bait was taken. Now it was time to tighten the noose and destroy them in the eyes of true justice. The black sedan driven by Arthur slowly entered the underground parking garage of a high-rise office building in the city center. Jessica's law firm was located in this building. The car was silent, but the air was thick with tension and anticipation. I looked at my reflection in the window. My face was pale, but my jaw was set, showing my determination. Gus sat calmly beside me, his rough, calloused hands folded in front of his chest, ready to protect me and ensure our plan was carried out. Arthur turned off the engine and turned to me. "A team of police officers, led by my old friend, is already waiting in the building's lobby. They're in plain clothes, so as not to cause a scene. They will accompany us and stand guard at the door of the room where your husband and Jessica are meeting with the bank representative. Everything is very well arranged. Sarah, all you have to do is walk in and shatter their world." I nodded slowly. Gus got out first to open the door for me. He offered his hand, helping me up. I took my wooden cane, stepping with both feet onto the concrete floor of the parking garage. A dull ache still ran from my calves to my thighs, but I ignored it. This pain was nothing compared to the agony of drowning in a cold lake. I steadied my breathing and followed Arthur step by step towards the elevator. The tap of my cane on the floor sounded like a funeral dirge for my cane. "Husband." We entered the main lobby. 3 burly men in neat shirts approached Arthur. They were the police officers with whom everything had been coordinated. They nodded respectfully at me. One of them showed his badge, signaling that they were ready to make arrests at any moment. We all got into the elevator, and it began its ascent to the 5th floor. The numbers on the display changed one by one, in sync with my slowly steadying heartbeat. The elevator doors opened. The 5th floor corridor was luxurious, carpeted with a thick red rug that muffled our footsteps. At the end of the corridor was a cross-descenti pair of teak double doors with gold carvings, the VIP meeting room. Arthur signaled for the police officers to take up positions on either side of the door. I walked forward, stopping just in front of the closed doors. I closed my eyes for a moment, concentrating. Through the fairly thick door, I could faintly hear a conversation. I leaned my ear a little closer. It was my husband's voice. "Everything is ready, Jessica. The bank has confirmed all the signatures." Ethan's voice sounded very rushed, showing his panic. "Calm down, Ethan. You're embarrassing me in front of the manager," Jessica's voice replied. She was trying to sound professional, but I knew she was also nervous. "Mr. Manager, the expedited death certificate and probate orders I forged were accepted by the bank this morning. According to the will, all assets, deposits, and company shares are legally transferred to Mr. Ethan as the sole heir. Please Double-check the transfer documents. Another man, probably the bank manager, mumbled. Yes, everything seems to be in line with legal procedures. However, I must remind you that withdrawing such a large amount of cash, $1 million on such short notice, requires special authorization. Especially when the news of your wife's death was just published in the papers a few hours ago. I need this money immediately, Ethan roared, losing his patience. The sound of a fist hitting the table echoed. I am her legal husband and the new owner of this entire estate. I need the cash today to pay for the expenses. The cost of searching for my wife's body and hiring an expensive private rescue team. I don't need to ask so many questions. Just sign and transfer the money to my personal account. Jessica immediately intervened. Please excuse my client, Mr. Manager. He is in a very unstable state of mind due to the loss of his beloved wife. Please understand him and help speed up the process. A feeling of disgust rose in my throat, and I almost gagged. What a harmonious pair in their vileness. They were using my death as an excuse to speed up the ravenous plundering of my family's assets to pay off the hidden blackmailer they thought was after them. Arthur looked at me and nodded slowly. The moment had come. I pushed the handle. Two of the double doors with my left hand, my right hand firmly planted on the wooden cane. The doors swung open with a soft creak, instantly interrupting all conversation in the room. The meeting room was spacious, with a large round table in the center. My husband, Jessica, and two men in bank uniforms were sitting there. All eyes turned to the door. Time seemed to stop. The air in the room felt like it had been sucked out. My husband's eyes widened so much they almost popped out of their sockets. His face, which had been red with anger, was now as white as a faggot sheet. His mouth hung open, but no sound came out. Jessica, sitting next to him, was no less shocked. The snake dropped her expensive pen. Her body trembled violently, as if she had just seen a ghost rise from hell. I took one step into the room. 2 steps. I walked with my chin held high, looking straight into my husband's eyes. Arthur and Gus entered behind me, standing like 2 unmovable guards. Good afternoon, I said in a very cold voice, breaking the suffocating silence. I apologize for being late to this important meeting concerning the division of my inheritance. The manager and his assistant were extremely confused. They looked from my face to my husband's. Miss Sarah, but weren't you reported deceased yesterday? The manager stammered. As you can see, I am very much alive and well, I replied calmly, never taking my eyes off Ethan. What was even more shocking was that I could walk, something my husband had not expected at all. My husband finally found his voice. His manipulative instincts tried to overcome his panic. He suddenly stood up, feigning relief, and opened his arms as if to blank. Hug me. Honey. Oh my God, thank God you're alive, Ethan exclaimed in a fake, trembling voice. He tried to get closer to me. My love, where have you been all night? I've been looking everywhere for you. I almost went crazy thinking you had drowned in the lake. Before Ethan could touch me, Gus stepped forward, putting his large hand out and blocking my husband's path. You will not touch Miss Sarah with your filthy hands, the old fisherman growled. Ethan stopped. His face twisted in a mask of rage. Who the hell are you, old man? How dare you stop me from hugging my wife? Get out of here right now. I let out a cold laugh, a hollow and emotionless sound. Stop your disgusting act, Ethan. There are no reporters here, no more fools for you to deceive with your crocodile tears. You're not happy to see me alive. You're terrified because your victim has returned from the bottom of the lake. What are you talking about, my love? I don't understand what you're saying. The cold lake water must have muddled your mind. Come, let's go home. I'll call the best doctors to take care of you. Ethan cooed, still trying to play the part of Dotterk, the caring husband, even though cold sweat was starting to bead on his temples. I took my phone out of my pocket and held it up. Do you remember this phone, Ethan? I hid it in my jacket pocket last night, in a waterproof bag. This phone recorded everything that happened on the dock. Ethan's face turned even paler. Jessica, realizing the impending danger, jumped up from her chair in a panic. Ethan, what is she talking about? What's on the phone? She shrieked hysterically. I didn't hesitate. I pressed the play button on the phone screen and turned the volume to the maximum. The clear sound echoed off the walls of the Prassel. Soundproof VIP room. The creaking of the chair being pushed. My ragged breathing. Look, honey. The sun is so beautiful, Ethan's calm voice said. Yes, it's beautiful, Ethan. But it's cold out here. Can we go inside? I'm feeling a little dizzy, my frightened voice replied. The rustling of Ethan's footsteps approaching. Die, you fool. Soon, everything will be mine, his hate-filled hiss. The splash as the chair hit the lake and my Wantersack's muffled scream. The recording continued to play, the part where Ethan and Jessica laughed gleefully, celebrating my death on the dock, discussing their plans to take over the estate and get married. The bank manager and his assistant flinched back, covering their mouths in horror at the clear evidence of such cruelty. This evidence was irrefutable. The voices belonged to the people standing in front of them. This is fake. This is a fabricated recording. Ethan screamed shrilly. He pointed at me with a trembling hand. You faked my voice with a computer program. You're trying to frame me because you're insane. Arthur stepped forward, slamming his briefcase down on the table, making everyone jump. He took a stack of photos from a folder and spread them across the round table. If you believe this recording is fake, then what about this, Mr. Ethan? Arthur's voice boomed with confidence in the room. These are photos from your black notebook, the records of your gambling debts that you hid in the Presta Day safe in your study. The total amount you owe to a criminal syndicate is in the recitalin. Millions of dollars. These notes clearly prove your motive for trying to murder your wife. You entrapped her, exacerbated her psychogenic paralysis with sedatives, and drowned her to seize her assets to pay off your gambling debts. Finally, Ethan's defenses crumbled. His legs gave out, and he staggered backward, collapsing into the chair behind him. He looked at Jessica in a panic, pleading for help. But the woman who had dreamed of being rich now turned against him. It was all your idea, Ethan. Jessica screamed hysterically, crying and pointing her finger at him. You planned all of this. You pushed her. I only helped with the paperwork because you threatened me. I had nothing to do with the murder. Sarah, please believe me. He forced me. Shut up, you gold-digging witch. Ethan roared just as loudly, his face purple, veins popping on his forehead. Weren't you the one who told me about the loophole in the will? You were the one who told me to speed up her death, so we could get the money. Watching these two traitors turn on each other, like dogs fighting over a bone, gave me a dark satisfaction. Arthur signaled to the police officers on duty outside. The three plainclothes officers quickly entered. Ethan Miller and Jessica Thorne. You are both under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, forgery of state documents, and attempted grand larceny, the senior officer said, pulling out his handcuffs. Seeing the police approaching, Ethan's panic gave way to absolute desperation. Like a cornered animal, he suddenly lunged at me, trying to grab my throat. If I'm going to prison, I'll make sure you really die by my hand. He screamed insanely. But before his filthy hands could even touch my collar, Gus reacted with lightning speed. The old fisherman, used to hauling heavy nets in storms, struck Ethan hard behind the knee, forcing my husband to his knees. The next second, Gus twisted Ethan's arms behind his back and slammed the thug's head onto the play. Red carpet. Don't you ever touch her again, Gus hissed with suppressed rage. Two police officers immediately took control of the situation, cuffing Ethan. Another officer cuffed Jessica, who continued to cry and struggle. They were both roughly escorted out of the room. The last look I gave my husband was one of cold triumph. My tears had dried up at the bottom of the lake, and now, this man would cry his own tears of blood behind cold iron bars for a very long time. 6 months had passed since the day of the arrest at the law firm. The rainy season had given way to a warm, sunny summer. A cool breeze played with my hair, which I now wore loose and natural. I sat on a wooden bench in the park in front of the city courthouse, waiting for Arthur to emerge from the main courtroom. Today was the day the final verdict was to be announced. For the past 6 months, I had been constantly going to the police station and the courthouse to testify, present evidence, and participate in long, exhausting interrogations. The case attracted significant public and media attention. The story of the treacherous husband who tried to kill his wife to seize her Inheritance, to pay off gambling debts. To a criminal syndicate became headline. News everywhere. Ethan had used his last remaining savings to hire an expensive lawyer to mitigate his sentence. He continued to deny the charges, pretending he had a personal mental breakdown due to the stress of caring for a paralyzed wife. However, all his lies were easily refuted by Dr. Evans's testimony, the evidence from the testimony, black notebook photographed by Maria, and the recording from my phone. Jessica, on the other hand, tried to become a prosecution witness, making a plea deal in hopes of a reduced sentence. She recounted Ethan's entire sinister plan. From beginning to end, how Ethan had staged the accident with my car 6 months earlier and how he had deliberately put sedatives in my coffee every night. However, Jessica's involvement in forging important government documents led to her being disbarred and her law license being permanently revoked. The main doors of the courthouse opened. Arthur came out with a radiant smile on his old face. Maria followed him, her face beaming. I immediately stood up from the bench, no longer needing a cane. Yes, in the past 6 months, thanks to regular physical therapy and a determined spirit, my legs had fully recovered. The psychological barrier was completely broken, and I could now walk as straight and tall as before. What's the verdict, Arthur? I asked, holding my breath. Arthur approached and shook my hand firmly. Justice has been served, Sarah. The judge sentenced Ethan to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In addition to attempted murder, they found evidence that he had been embezzling from the company for the past year. Jessica was sentenced to 25 years in prison for being the mastermind behind the inheritance fraud. Neither of them will see freedom again. A sense of relief washed over my chest, like a flood breaking through a dam. The heavy burden that had been on my shoulders for so long was gone without a trace. I hugged Arthur tightly, then Maria, who was crying with happiness beside me. This victory was not just mine, but my mother's, who was watching over me from heaven, and for all those who dared to speak out against injustice. A week after the verdict, I went to the coastal village where Gus lived. I parked my car by the river inlet, not far from the humble shack that had been my sanctuary. Gus was sitting on his porch, mending a torn fishing net. As soon as he saw me, the old fisherman immediately stood up and greeted me with his familiar warm smile. Sarah, welcome. I saw the news on TV. I'm so happy for you, Gus said sincerely. It's all thanks to you, I replied with a smile. If you hadn't helped me that night, this story would have had a very different ending. Gus, I didn't just come to visit. I want to invite you for a walk to the village pier. I want to show you something. Gus followed me, a look of confusion on his face. We walked along the rough stone path to the small harbor where the fishermen docked their boats. At the end of the pier, a modern, medium-sized fishing vessel, painted a bright white and blue, was moored there. Guardian Angel was painted in large letters on its side. The boat was equipped with a powerful twin engine, a modern navigation system, and a large cold storage compartment for fish. I pointed to the boat. This is your new boat. The ownership papers are already in your name, Gus. I've also opened a savings account to pay for your 2 children's education until they graduate college. Gus's eyes widened. His mouth fell open, but he couldn't speak. The strong old fisherman suddenly collapsed onto the wooden floor of the pier, covering his face with his rough hands and sobbing. Sarah, this is too much. I helped you. Not for this great reward. I'm just a poor man. I don't deserve such an ardent, expensive gift, Gus sobbed, his voice trembling. I knelt in front of him, gently taking his shoulders. Gus, you saved a life. No. Price is too high for a life. This is a blessing, passed through me as a thank you for your sincere kindness. Please, accept this boat. Use it to make a living. Without having to risk going out to sea in an old boat during a storm. With unrestrained tears, Gus thanked me profusely. My heart was filled with warmth. Using my wealth to change the life of the kind person who had helped me brought me a greater happiness than any luxury item in the world. 3 months later, a major event was held at our family's lake house. The place that had silently witnessed my attempted murder was now completely transformed. I had decided not to sell the cabin. Instead of running from the pain, I had turned it into a source of strength. The large cabin was completely renovated and inaugurated as the Beacon of Hope Foundation, a free rehabilitation center. and shelter for women and children who are victims of domestic violence. The front yard of the cabin was filled with guests, from local officials, medical experts, psychologists, to philanthropists. Maria stood in the front row, wearing a formal uniform. She was now the head of logistics at the Formal Uniform Foundation. Arthur and Dr. Evans were also present as honorary advisors. I stood on a small podium overlooking the lake, preparing to give my opening speech. I looked at the crowd with a confident smile. "I once saw this place as my grave," I said into the microphone, my voice echoing in the evening silence. "Here, my wings were broken by the people I trusted most. But it was from the bottom of those cold, dark waters that I realized a woman's strength to survive is beyond all logic. This foundation is for all those who have ever felt broken, worthless, and paralyzed by betrayal. Here, we will heal our wounds together. We will prove that we are not helpless victims, but resilient warriors." A thunderous applause echoed across the property. After the ceremony, as the Talon 70 guests began to enjoy the evening refreshments, I walked to the old wooden dock that stretched out over the lake. This was the very dock where my husband had pushed my chair. I stood at the edge, feeling the cool breeze on my face. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon, casting a beautiful golden-orange light on the calm lake surface. The water no longer scared me. This was the place where the weak woman named Sarah had drowned, and where a strong, free woman was born. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the air of freedom. My past was buried at the bottom of this lake, along with that wheelchair. My husband once said that soon everything would be his. He was dead wrong. My life, every step I take, and my future now belonged entirely to me, and no one in this world could ever take them away from me again.